St. George's Church on the west side of Germantown. We are full on into this preparation for the coming of Christ, and we certainly hope that those of you who are looking for a special place to worship will come and join us any Sunday morning. I want to really precede my comments to you with a little story of illustration to talk about what it means to respect the dignity of every human being. Once long ago, there was a very wealthy landowner who was looking for a manager for his property. The time and the land was a very poor one, and people were struggling. And so this position was particularly appealing, and everyone knew that this landowner was a very generous and kind and wonderful person. And so competition for this position was fierce, and people began talking among themselves about how wonderful it would be to be the person who would manage this wealthy landowner's property. Early on, people were promoting themselves, and they were talking about all of the skills and gifts that they might bring to this particular position. And the landowner, as he passed through town, would hear people talking about their great skills with crops or their great skills with managing people and all of the things that they could do well to be his manager. But as the days passed, something happened. And rather than people continuing to talk about the gifts that they might bring to being the manager, they began to be disrespectful to one another. They began to talk about why Sam over there would be terrible for this job. He's not like the rest of us. We think he's kind of mean. Or there's Joe over there. His skin's a different color. He really isn't one of us. He shouldn't be the manager. Oh, there's John over there. He wears funny clothes. He shouldn't be the manager. Oh, there's Pete back there. Pete's never fit in. He shouldn't be the manager. And all of their conversation became more and more and more disrespectful toward one another. Finally, the landowner thought, I have an idea. And so he called for a town meeting. And he said, I understand lots of people are interested in working as my manager, so I have a proposition for you all. And here's my proposition. You will come before me, and I want you, when you come before me, to recommend the person that you think you least would like to see in this job, and use the very words that you have used to criticize and accuse that person to build your case to recommend them. So he called for the meeting, and no one came forward, because everyone had become so deeply entrenched in all of their criticisms and accusations about all of the people around them that they couldn't begin to say, well, there's a value in the person whose skin is a different color. There's a value in the person whose clothes aren't like ours. There's a value in the person who just doesn't seem to fit in with us. No one could even bring themselves to come forward to see the good in anyone else who wanted the job. And the landowner sat and waited, and no one came forward. And he shook his head and said, "How sad are we? How sad are we that we cannot see the good in one another." I offer these words today in the wake of learning that a student at Houston High School took his own life just days ago. I offer these words in a world where hate speech, where bullying, where criticism have become rampant, and our ability to deal with one another as civil human beings has become so strained and difficult. And I offer this from the wisdom of the landowner in that story. When we allow ourselves to take the very worst thing that we could think about a neighbor and ask ourselves how that person can be valued. If we fear someone who is different, then perhaps we ask ourselves, why do we fear this person? And we take just a moment to walk in their shoes to say, what does it mean to be that person? Just a moment to walk in their shoes. The person who was abrupt to us might be a caregiver for someone who is ill and struggling and may be completely and totally exhausted. The person that we thought might have cut us off might be rushing to get to another job because the first job doesn't pay the bills, and if they're late for the second job, they'll lose it. The person who didn't smile at us might just have lost a loved one, and there might not be any smiles left in them that day. The person who didn't acknowledge something that we said might not have understood us, might have a hearing impediment, and the words just weren't clear. The person who didn't get up to greet us might have challenges with mobility, and trying to get out of a chair could drain them of their energy. For all of us to be able to take the worst thing that we can think about another human being and try to ask ourselves, why do I think that? Why do I fear that person? Why do I dislike that person? Why does that person make me feel uncomfortable? For us to do that gives us just the most amazing opportunity to see people as the Christian world believes them to be. And that's people who are all made in the image and likeness of our God. We owe ourselves to be more than all the people who were competing for jobs with that landowner. We owe ourselves an opportunity to ask, what don't I know about this person? What should I know about this person? How can I care more deeply about this person? How can I understand this person better? Because when we understand one another, we can begin to close these gaps that have widened so much in our community. We can see one another all as human, all as beloved, and all as one. Thank you.